full of her regulars. And yes, you can even call in. Call 917-889-3675. That's 917-889-3675 to be a part of the action on the phone line. Not able to listen live? Not a problem. You can always catch Annie, the Radio Chick, and Southern Sense Talk Radio podcasts in archives at southern-sense.com. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Southern Sense the right way.
Good afternoon. Thank God it's Friday. You're here listening to Southern Sense here on Blog Talk Radio, American Patriot Radio, SHR Media, High Plains Daily News, Kinetic Hi-Fi, The Fix FM out of Charleston, South Carolina. You'll find us up on iTunes, Twitter, Spreaker, Stitcher, whatever out there. You'll find Southern Sense. Just check out our websites. The name of the show, put a dash in the middle, southern-sense.com. I'm your hostess with the mostest, the Radio Chick, Annie, along with my co-host, my ever-so-troubled co-host, Curtis C.S. Bennett, who actually just dropped off the screen. Oh, it's going to be one of those days, folks. Going to be one of those days. Curtis is having some computer issues, so hopefully he'll be able to join with us back again. I was just talking to him a second ago, but we're going to have a fun-filled show. I want to welcome everyone that's up in the chat room that's joining us there, and those that are now popping up into the studio. Just a reminder, if you are in the studio and you wish to join the conversation, place your index finger to the number 1 on your dial pad, press it, and I know you're there in queue waiting to join us. We've got ourselves a great guest joining us at 1:15. Former diplomat and national security expert Jim Horn will be joining us. And at the second half of the show, we're going to have Gun Owners of America executive Larry Pratt. Always fun to have Larry back on the show. That said, we've got a lot to do, a lot to say, and a lot to talk about. But before we can do that, each and every show, you know, is dedicated to a fallen hero. And once again, today's show is dedicated to another fallen first responder, to Trooper Eric Dale Ellsworth of Utah Highway Patrol out of Utah. His end of watch was Tuesday, November 22nd of 2016. And this is from the Salt Lake Tribune by Jessica Miller. Family and community mourn Eric Ellsworth, a father of 3, second-generation trooper and 7-year veteran of the force. Brighton City. In the week since her husband died after he was struck by a car while working as a Utah Highway Patrol trooper, Janika Ellsworth has asked her 3 young sons what they miss most about their father, 31-year-old Eric Dale Ellsworth. They answered, everything. Our life was so simple, but was so good, she told more than 1,000 people who gathered at her husband's funeral. The little things we always did together are the things that I will miss the very most. She remembered simple times of going to Mantua for ice cream or eating hamburgers at Smith and Edwards. She wondered about whom she will watch their television shows with after the kids go to bed. Who will take joy in scaring her and chasing her up the stairs? I will be there for our kids when our hearts are breaking, Janika said. I'll endure the lonely, quiet nights and an empty bed. I will try not to be sad when I want to tell you something and you're not there. I love you, and everyone loves you. Eric Ellsworth was a second-generation trooper and a 7-year veteran of the force. A car struck him on November 18th, and he died after several days in the hospital. He was a 6'2" gentle giant who loved serving and helping people. Governor Gary Herbert told those who gathered at Weber State University that the trooper was someone Utahns could emulate. Eric truly does represent the very best that society has to offer, Herbert said. He's a hero. A hometown hero. Ellsworth's supervisor, Sergeant Shane Newbaker, said that the young trooper was ambitious and never wanted to appear to be slacking. If another trooper responded to more calls than he did on a snowy day, Ellsworth would call his sergeant and apologize, because he didn't think that he was doing enough. Baker recalled an incident that occurred just a month before he passed, when Ellsworth encountered a man walking on the roadway with an open beer in one hand and a case in the other. The trooper shot the man with a stun gun after he threatened the trooper with a knife. Ellsworth, who didn't swear, later apologized to Baker, saying, "Don't get mad when you watch the dashcam video. I told the guy to get off the damn road." Baker recalled that Ellsworth loved to sneak up on troopers doing paperwork in their patrol cars, plastering his face onto their windows. He was known to hide in the weeds and jump out to startle his co-workers. But more than anything, Ellsworth loved his family, Baker said. He talked often about his 3 sons, Bennett, Ian, and Oliver, and the trouble they would get into. Eric didn't ask time off for himself or his hobbies, he said. He always took time off for his family. Growing up with 7 sisters, brother Mike Ellsworth said he and Eric Ellsworth had to stick together. They played cops and robbers while camping, loved being goofy around each other, and would work out together. Eric showed me and my sisters how to be tough, whether we liked it or not, Mike said. At the Brigham City Cemetery, Mike Ellsworth wept tears rolling down his face as he looked inside the hearse that carried his brother's flag-draped casket. Bagpipes played as Ellsworth was carried to his final resting place. Fellow highway patrol troopers and other law enforcement officers throughout Utah and the nation filled the chilly, snow-covered cemetery to pay their respects to the trooper. At the end of a brief graveside service, a final call for Ellsworth from a dispatcher came over the police radio. "This is a final radio call for Trooper 395, Eric Ellsworth," the dispatcher said. "Thank you for your dedication to your family and friends, the Highway Patrol, and the people of Utah. Our hearts are broken, but your legacy will live on forever. We will miss your sweet spirit and that beautiful smile. Thank you, Eric. God be with you until we meet again." American flags lined the route to the cemetery along with well-wishers from the community. Local businesses also displayed flags or messages of thanks and support to Ellsworth and his family. Angeline Midget, who stood near the corner of South and Main, said she took her kids out of school for the day so they can see the procession and how important it was. He was an honest, fair, decent police officer who cared about Box Elder County and its residents. We are here to show our respects for the family in UHP. Today's show is dedicated to Trooper Ellsworth. It is also dedicated to all the first responders, the brave men and women who every day don their uniforms, never knowing if they're going to go back home to their family and friends. It is also dedicated to all the men and women in our military that have served since the birth of this nation to today and into the future. We dedicate this song, Last Call, by Dave Bray. God bless them, each and every one.
No time, please hear me out. Hello.
Hi, it's Annie. Is Curtis there? Because he was in the studio and he dropped
Annie.
out. Yeah.
Oh, I talked to him earlier. Curtis is way down in Plantation. He said he was having trouble getting
all right,
on.
Which number is his?
It would be the 3300 972 386 972 3300.
All right, let me try to get a hold of him there. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
You're welcome.
Hello.
Hey, Curtis, it's me. Curtis?
Yeah, I just installed Mozilla. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. I got you in the studio, all right? I got you in the studio right now. You're in the studio now, okay?
Oh. All right, let me get back on there.
All right. And that was Dave Bray, Last Call. And you can get it at davebrayusa.com. And we're back. You're here listening to Southern Sense here on Blog Talk Radio, American Patriot Radio, SHR Media, High Plains Media, Daily News, Kinetic Hi-Fi, the Fix FM out of Charleston, South Carolina. And I said that all in one breath. I'm your hostess with the mostest, the radio chicken. It looks like we got our co-host back, Curtis C.S. Bennett. Curtis, you with us today?
Yes, I'm down here in sunny Fort Lauderdale. Has been the case here recently, trying to deal with some technical issues with my computer, but I'm back.
Okay. For those that are in the chat room, Curtis could not get into the chat, and it seems like you're not the only one having problems with the phone. I just had someone text me that they're having problems dialing and listening into the show. So I apologize if you're listening through Blog Talk Radio. We also are up, I want to let you know, also on Spreaker. Just go to our website. It's the name of the show. Put a dash in the middle, southern-sense.com. I've got the players up there. So if you can't quite listen in correctly, you're getting a little bit problems dialing in, or you're in the chat room, can't, just go to our website, southern-sense.com. Curtis, we got ourselves a great guest here today. He is a former diplomat, also a security expert, an expert on the Middle East, as well as fundamental Islam. And I want to welcome aboard to Southern Sense, Jim Horn. Good afternoon, Jim.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Oh, we're doing fine if we can just work out the technical glitches. But it wouldn't be live radio unless we had some problem going on during the show, you know?
Yeah. I enjoyed your lead, and we were giving homage to the police. My mother was a policewoman, had shield number 6 in Minneapolis. She was one of the pioneers.
Wow. Because when I joined the NYPD, we were less than 12% of the force. At the time I retired, we, as women in the force, at that point comprised about 20%. So, yeah, It was a pioneering start, but I'm not as old as your mom. That's for sure.
Yeah.
but you got to think I was in the force between 86 and 96, and you got to think how far we had not come at that point. Because I remember one of my first assignments in regular patrol, I was assigned a male partner, and the guy turns around and goes, "I ain't riding with no woman." So we didn't come too far in those years.
Wow.
Well, I've done police ride-alongs in my community, and they always put me with a woman police officer.
Oh, you got the gentle touch.
Yeah. Well, I'm not small. I can be intimidating.
Well, if you watch, actually, a lot of women are actually tougher than the guys. In many instances, number one, we had to prove ourselves.
They have to be.
Yeah, and number two, if a woman broke down at a crime scene, you would never hear the end of it. Yet, if a male cop shows up and sees an injured child or something like that, you would see them break down and cry. But the woman, God forbid you did that, so you had to be tougher, And, not to sound like they were being prejudiced, it's just the makeup of our species. We are who we are. We can't hide that. So, I got equal pay for an equal job, but, that you're different expectations out of who shows up. Well, I've got a ton of stuff I wanted to talk to you about, and we got a little off track here, but thank you for your compliment.
Okay.
Oh, man.
Sorry.
That's all right. We have right now the Ninth Circuit just held in place their overturning of the moratorium on immigration and visas from 7 specific countries in the Middle East that are known centers to harbor terrorism. And what are we going to see come from Trump after this? Because there was a suggestion from an attorney on Fox News that it's possible he can reword the executive order, reissue it, and then bypass the Ninth Circuit once again.
I think that is a very feasible thing to do. This Ninth Circuit Court, they are representatives of what I am starting to dub the great left-wing conspiracy against Trump.
Yes.
And these characters are right in line with Pelosi and Schumer and all these other people who are just absolutely having conniptions because Trump won the election. He is the president of the United States, and these people cannot tolerate the idea of somebody like Trump being able to outsmart them. And he really did it in spades, and it's driving them to distraction. I am so happy with him.
A lot of
as far as dealing with this immigration issue, they can reword it. They can do other things. He can put restrictions on the State Department, tell them to stop issuing visas to people from those countries, and to stop issuing passports to certain American people. He can do a lot of things. He has a lot of power and a lot of authority. He just hasn't gotten it all put together yet, but I really think he's going to be doing the right thing. He wants to protect America from evil, and the evil in the world is Islam, period. There's no equivocation about that. And these people coming in are largely younger men, single. They are the warriors. They are a vanguard. They are a Trojan horse coming into this country, and their intention is to make war on Americans. That's the only thing there is with it. And anybody who's trying to say something else is a liar. And it's very tragic and unfortunate that a lot of the organizations that are bringing these people in and working so hard to bring them in have names like Catholic World Relief, Lutheran World Relief. They have Christian names, but they are certainly not Christians.
No, they're not.
And that is part of the great deception that's being passed down on American people, and we have to stop that. We have to find ways to counter that.
Yeah, because the refugee resettlement out of the UN is anything but, Christian based. The UN is telling us who we must accept as a refugee in our country, as an immigrant into our nation. What other nation does that? Do we tell Mexico who they must take as an immigrant? No. Do we tell Russia who they must take as an immigrant? No. Would Israel tolerate us doing that? No. And yet we do. I don't think any other nation accepts such a mandate as we do. Such a large number of refugees and immigrants. You may get a small handful, say, into France or Germany, but not the amount that is being forced upon us through this refugee resettlement program with the UN.
That's the problem was with the United Nations. The United Nations turned against us about 20 years ago. Most Americans haven't figured that out yet. They are under the domination control of the 57 Muslim nations called the Organization of Islamic Countries, or something like that. I forgot the exact term today. But they are the ones who control the United Nations. They use their Saudi money and they use their Kuwaiti money to coerce others to vote against the United States, to vote in favor of the things they want. They've got all the sub-agencies of the United Nations under their control, such as the refugee programs. And in the refugee programs, they are helping the Islamists, of course, and they are forsaking the Christian refugees. There are about 2 million of Christian refugees stuck in camps in Crete, in Cyprus, and other countries that have not been allowed to come in here under the Obama administration. This is something that we need to rectify, and we need to provide a balance. If we have brought in several 100,000 Islamists, well, I think it's time to change course about 180 degrees and start welcoming Christian refugees. That's what we need to. They'll be wonderful citizens. Yes, they will have some problems and some baggage that they bring with them, but they will be wonderful citizens. They will be gloriously happy to be able to come here, and this is what we need to do if we want to provide a balance to this situation. As far as bringing Islamists in, Islam under Muhammad has declared eternal warfare on all who are not Muslim. That is the United States, that is Europe, that is every other country in the world that does not have Islamist imams running their government. We have decent people running our governments in most cases. Sometimes they're not too bright, like Merkel with her problems, but by and large, there's some really, really wonderful people out there wanting to do good things for their people in their countries, and then some of them have their heads screwed on sideways and they're not doing the right things. We have a president now with his head screwed on right, and we want to help him, and I am looking for ways, and I'm encouraging all conservatives and Republicans to not just sit back there and say, oh, I'm happy we've got a president now, he can do things. He needs our help. He needs our support. He needs our action to get out there to support him.
You know, it's funny you said that because I got an email, because I am the leader of my Tea Party here in South Carolina, and I got an email from another Tea Party leader out in Iowa, and what he wants to do is start having people that have Trump signs to proudly display them in their businesses, in their homes, on their bumper stickers, to wear your Trump stuff, and, you know, just let everyone out there know that we are supporting him and Vice President Mike Pence.
Yes, we need to do more of that. I've got a couple of Trump T-shirts. I'm wearing one right now. And I do go out, and I'm supporting Trump. I'm not going to put any bumper stickers on my new car because somebody out here in liberal California will probably slash the car. But I have an older truck, and it's a pickup truck, so I can use that as a billboard in support of Trump, and I will.
Oh, that is true.
I want to make a comment. Annie, on what I was saying earlier about charitable organizations. One of the problems I see is that in their efforts to help others, along Christian, lines and theology, they equate Islam with most other religions. And I think that's dangerous for these organizations to do, because Islam is more than a religion. To some, it's a way of life. And it's a religion that's intolerable of other religions. And there can only be one religion to those who practice Islam. And that's the thing that I think we are making a big mistake when when you talk about charities and stuff, bringing in these people thinking that they're being good Christians.
Yeah, all religions on earth practice and preach tolerance except for Islam. Their dogma, their laws called Sharia are anti-Christian, anti-Jewish, anti-anything that is not Muslim. And they call Christians and Jews people of the book as if that gives us some sort of a privileged status as second-class citizens. And others who are not Christians or Jews are even considered worse, and they are to be just plain killed. And that's what the Islamists did when they came out of Persia and headed into Afghanistan and the Indian subcontinent. They murdered over 50 million people in the course of a couple of dozen years. And of course, Afghanistan was a Buddhist country before the Muslims showed up. When they finished up, there was not a Buddhist left alive. And the Buddhists were tolerant people. They tolerated these people coming in. It's the same thing happened in Egypt, which was a Christian nation before the Islamists came in. And they came in like they're coming here, in bits and pieces and dribs and drabs. They settle down. They have Christian neighbors. They're real sweet and nice and stuff like that until they reached a numerical superiority. And then they erupted and they annihilated the Christians and the Christian faith in Egypt, which was one of the great Christian countries of the world. The Christian libraries at Alexandria had enormous quantities of manuscripts and writings that were one of a kind. They were scrolls on leather. And the Islamists, when they took over Egypt and they took over Alexandria, it took them 6 months to burn all of that literature in those libraries, that precious one-of-a-kind literature and information. It was destroyed. And that's what they want to do. We've seen it in Afghanistan where they've blown up Buddhist statuary and things like that. This is what Islam is about. They can't tolerate anybody else. And that is why they have to kill.
Mm-hmm.
You know, well, so tragic. But that is something that I think God has put on earth to challenge us, to cause us to come back to our faith, and to understand that there is true evil on earth. And Islam is the epitome of that evil.
You know, it's funny because I used to get National Geographic, and I remember prior to 9/11, long before 9/11, when we were fighting in Afghanistan, that the Taliban had actually gone into ancient sites and completely destroyed ancient temples and statues and everything else. Simply destroyed it because it was not of the Islamic faith. If you also think back to the birth of India, when it ended up having to split with Pakistan because one half was Muslim and the other half was Hindu. You know, they had to create two separate nations because the Muslims were slaughtering the Hindus. And the Hindus are supposed to be a peaceful people, but they had to fight back to defend themselves. And they weren't innocent also in the slaughtering. But, you know, it has been throughout history. You know, we had it with the Barbary Wars. But why is it after 1,600 years we still cannot get it through our thick heads that they are our enemies?
Because with people who are willfully ignorant, and we have a problem here in the United States, this is something that I've spoken about quite frequently, that after World War II, when the Saudis and the Arab oil people started gathering a lot of money, and they decided they wanted to start pushing their version of Islam on the world, they came to the United States, and of course there was a progression to it, and they're very good planners at doing this stuff. They had thousands of people come over here, and they studied our laws and our customs to learn how we think and how we work. They know our laws better than we do in many cases. And then they came over, and they came first to American Christian seminaries. And they went to the different seminaries and say, we would like to help you out with your education of your pastors and your priests for America. And they need to understand the Middle East better. We would like to provide you with an endowment of X number of million of dollars to establish an Islamic studies program. And, of course, we will provide an imam trained to come and conduct the courses and do the training. And these seminaries said, oh, money, money, money. Everybody needs money. So they said yes. So all of a sudden you're going up with all these Christian seminaries where they had leading imams conducting courses and brainwashing these young, bright-eyed theologians who wanted to be pastors and priests about Islam, and they were brainwashing them with the false truth. It's the same thing that's happening in our elementary schools where they have textbooks that have 3 and 4 and 5 chapters about Islam and 3 and 4 and 5 paragraphs about Christianity, Judaism, and other faiths. And of course, these things are all propaganda. They portray Muhammad as some sort of a Johnny Appleseed who traipsed around the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, spreading the love of Islam among all of the happy people out there. The fact of the matter is that before he showed up, the Saudi Arabian Peninsula were pagans, were Christians, and they were Jews. And by the time Muhammad died, none of those people were left alive. If they didn't convert to Islam, they were killed. And this is the foundation of Islam. And of course the Quran, and Muhammad said that Muhammad was the perfect man. He is somebody that every Muslim man must emulate in every way possible. And when they're emulating Muhammad and killing Christians, that is wonderful. That is what they're supposed to do. And that is, unfortunately, the I think God works in different ways. I'm going to digress a little bit. A year in God's time is whatever. We don't know what it is. But he created Islam as the Antichrist. That's my conviction. And the battle has been raging for 1,400 years, and it is still raging, and it's going to get much, much more violent, especially here in the United States. They've kept the lid on things for a while because they didn't want to do anything to embarrass Barack Obama. But now that we have Donald Trump, they are going and they are planning, and we can expect within the next few months some very, very terrible incidents here in the United States. They're going to be planned, and they're going to be carried out by groups of people, not lone wolves going into a nightclub and shooting the place up, which is very tragic. These things are going to be some bigger, more significant happenings, and they're going to shock people. They're going to scare people, and that is the intent, is to frighten and to intimidate people so that they'll get down on their knees and say, "Oh, we don't want to get hurt. We'll do whatever you want." And that is their game, and that is their goal. And there are people in this country who would be foolish enough to accept that.
You know, it's funny. I had a young lady here at the house just a little earlier today, and I had Fox News on, and Trump was up there mentioning about the Muslim ban, and she's shaking her head like this is really a horrible thing that, you know, that Trump wants this ban. And I said, well, wait a minute. I read the ban. It's not a ban. It's a moratorium, only for 90 days. For just a simple 90 days until we can figure out what to do with these countries that are sending terrorists over here to attack us. It's not including Indonesia, which has over 10 million Muslims. It's the largest Muslim populated nation, and we haven't stopped them from coming here. It is not with Saudi Arabia, which personally I think should have been on the list. And it says the major top 10, out of the top 10, only Iran is listed in that top 10 at number 7. And we know for a fact Iran wants to destroy the United States. So do you want your enemy to walk through your front door and kill you? No. We're just asking to let us take a look to see what policy we can put in place to protect our fellow Americans here. And then
yes.
How much damage can we do in just saying wait 90 days before you try coming back here?
No, there were 7 countries that the ban is upon. That was a list that was put together under the Obama administration by Obama.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that this 90 days is to back up and regroup and say, who do we need to take a look at? And we really need to take a look at all 57 nations of Islam, because at least 10% of the population of each one of those countries would be willing to take up arms against us at the first opportunity, and the other 90% will just pay the bills and support them. That's your typical military force, where you have 1 foot soldier in the field and you have 9 people providing the support mechanism. That's exactly what Islam is doing as well.
You know, it's
and if you have and they have 1.5 billion Muslims. That's 10% is 150 million Muslims. That's half the population of the United States, and they're ready to take up arms and come out and start going after us. We have to take this into consideration. I believe President Trump and his crew will do that. There's some smart people that he's got on there. He's some capable people. I hope they do a little bit more to get their education and their understanding of the true meaning and the true objectives and goals of Islam, and then start addressing it from that point of view.
Curtis, you had a question.
I heard a couple of weekend liberals on television last week saying how awful it is that we would keep some of these innocent people that fell through the cracks of this ban from seeing their families for 90 days. And my thought on this is this. We have service people overseas on deployment for over 6, 7, 8 months. Some doing 2 or 3 tours, and they're away from their families. So, I don't really have a lot of sympathy for, for this notion that we're keeping them from their families for a couple of weeks or whatever.
I don't either. I have a son who was in the Navy Special Forces, and he's been deployed a couple of times. And because he's there, I've been the grandpa with my grandchildren. But it's been very sad with him being away for extended periods of time like that. And when they talk about breaking families up, for instance, here in the United States with the southern border, where we're talking about sending illegals back, and they say, well, what about their American citizen children that were born here? And my answer is very simple. They can take their kids with them. When the kids are 21, they can return to the United States, and they can file petitions, and they can bring their parents over here, and they can support them then. But until then, they can go live over there. There's no problem with that. But the screaming, oh well, we're going to tear parents and send them back to Mexico and keep their orphan children here. That is balderdash, and they know it. But they're using that to try and injure and harm other people to support their agenda, which is anti-American agenda. America is the big guy on the block, and we've had people coming at us, picking and doing all sorts of things to harm us, to split us up, to break us up. Having our multicultural society with a Mexican American and African American, and okay, well, I'm a European American. Oh, wow. We are Americans, and if you don't want to be an American, you want to be an African American, you can be an African American in Africa. You want to be a Spanish American, you can be a Spanish American in Spain. But if you're going to be in America, you're going to be an American, and you're going to speak English. This is our life. This is what people talk about. Borders, language, and culture. We have to protect ourselves. We are the greatest nation on earth. And President Trump is working to restore that greatness. We need to support him, and we need to actively support him, not just talk about it.
It's funny you mentioned that you think that something may occur here in the United States in about 2 months or so. But looking at the news, as you're watching these protests going on the streets, and you see, I remember the Berkeley riot. I'm going to call it exactly what it is, the Berkeley riots. You saw black shirts. And what I thought of when I saw these black shirts smashing businesses, beating people up, I thought of the Kristallnacht. And I've said this before. It reminded me of the Nazis when they took over Germany. And it's the same exact tactics, the very same tactics. These are very well organized protests. Everyone has a specific message they're told to push there. And they're using Nazi tactics on peaceful people and calling the peaceful people the Nazis. And then they call their unit the anti-Nazis? Really? Take a look in the mirror, folks, because the pot is calling the kettle black. Sure.
And that the new Nazis are wearing black shirts, not brown shirts.
Exactly.
And
we got a comment
and rather than call them Nazis, I think it's better to call them what they are, fascist communists.
Exactly. We got a comment in the chat room from Vito Esposito, who has his own radio show here. Vito says, we're going to break up families. What about not one U.S. soldier captive has been returned to the U.S. in 15 years? Not one. What about those military families who are split up? It's a very good point. Here we're giving preferential treatment to people that are criminals. They came here illegally. They broke the law that makes them a criminal. And yet the men and women that are fighting for our nation, we treat as criminals. It's bass backwards.
It is bass backwards. And this is what I think President Trump, in going at things 180 degrees different from Obama's approach, 180 degrees different from Schumer, 180 degrees different from Pelosi, 180 degrees different from everybody in the Democratic Party, and this is what's driving them to distraction, because he's doing it every day. He's not waiting a couple of weeks for each move. He does a move every day that his Senate has them running around in circles. And I was reading something the other day where President Trump is even putting things out there that is kind of misinformation, and the liberal media goes off in a frenzy looking for information and the evidence and stuff like that, and they're spinning their wheels and not getting anything done. And the thing that is driving them really, really bothers them terribly is the fact that he can tweet more truth in 140 characters than they can handle, and they can't spin it because it's out there on a tweet. And millions of people are reading these tweets every day. I started tweeting since President Trump was elected. Before that, I didn't tweet because I just had too many other things on my plate. Well, I just added this to my plate. And but he's just doing a fantastic job, and I enjoy it every day. I just have to sit back and chuckle. I can't even keep up with him, and I'm on his side.
Well, that's what his staff says, that he is like the ever-ready bunny rabbit. He's always constantly on the go. And you don't see him take off for a vacation. What vacation? You don't see him every weekend out on the golf course. What's a golf course to him at this point in time? His priority is in the Oval Office. And even on the weekend, he's out there working. Now, I'm going to ask you a question, go off in a little bit of a different direction, because I saw something. He did two things. And I think the two things he did may sound like they're not related, but I think they are entwined very deeply. Number one, he opened up the oil pipelines. He's talked also about going with the offshore drilling. And at the same time, he's making overtures to Putin, hinting about helping fight ISIS. Yet at the same time, he's talking about NATO. And the reason why I say these things are all intertwined is if we are energy efficient and if we can turn around and take oil and ship it over to Europe, we can be the largest oil producer in the world, therefore the greatest superpower in the world. Then Putin will have to back off and fall in lockstep behind us, back off on NATO, and help us fight this fundamental Islam. Islam is fundamental Islam, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, in one of my books, Experiencing Islam, I talk about the Middle East oil, the fact that we have reserves here in the United States, Russia has reserves, and other places have reserves that we should consider if things go south, especially like right now in Iran, going in there and using highly energized nuclear weapons in the Iranian oil fields to render that ground so hot that no creature can live on it or walk there for 1,000 years. Put their oil out of business, because we do have the oil. Russia has oil and other places like that. And Russia is a natural ally of ours in the coming wars with Islam. Putin has said that on TV about a year and a half ago. And he extended the olive branch. Here, the United States and Russia, we have a natural enemy, and that is Islam, and we should work together in dealing with that enemy, that common enemy that the Russians have been dealing with on the southern frontier for over 1,000 years, ever since the Ottoman Turks invaded. And so they know, they understand Islam far better than we do. The Chinese have the Uyghurs and the Muslims on their eastern front that they've been battling for 1,000 years, and they know what they're dealing with, and they're not being very kindly towards their Islamists who get out of line. They get out of line. They face the consequences, and the consequences are not very pleasant. But every once in a while, somebody will go off and think they can do something. And we are the three big gorillas in the rooms, I guess. And the United States, China, and Russia would be natural allies in any conflict, major conflict with Islam in the world. And this is where it's headed. And I know it's headed that way. People don't recognize it yet. They want to still paint China as a boogeyman. Well, China, they're not innocent. They've committed crimes against humanity and stuff like that. But they are coming around more and more, and each change of government becomes more civilized and more rational and more reasonable. And this is what's happening also in Russia. Putin, he's a ex-KGB agent. He's a hard case. He is not tolerant of people who try to oppose him, but he does understand the world. And his real politic goal is to make sure that Russia is not left behind, and that Russia is allied with people that will, in the long run, support one another, not just Russia, support one another in the coming wars with Islam. That's exactly the word that Putin said. And that's absolutely right. I have a lot of respect for him. People should understand that he is who he is and what he is, and that he has his goals and his objectives, but they are not to destroy the United States of America. Neither does China want to destroy the United States of America, but the greater Islamic world does.
I have someone just sent me a message, wants to know what your Twitter handle is, because I know on your website, which is your name, jamesehorn.com, you've got a Facebook link and a LinkedIn link. But I was looking for a Twitter link and I didn't see one because I wanted to put it up there. What is your Twitter handle?
I got to look it up right now.
Well, now you got to add it to your website too, so people can follow you up on Twitter too.
Yeah.
All right. So people can just also check out your website, which is jamesehorn.com. It's sorry about the little. All right. We also have a question up in the chat room from Vito, if time permitting. Yes, we have time. We've got another 10 minutes. So.
Okay.
He wants to know if you believe the Russians did a hacking job on the U.S. elections, or was it the CIA and SA who threw Hillary under the bus? And tell Mustang Steve I said hi. Okay. Well, hi, Mustang Steve.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on this hacking job, this allegation of the Russians hacking into our elections, or did the CIA and NSA throw Hillary under the bus?
I think the CIA and the NSA and the FBI, in their own different ways, contributed to throwing Hillary under the bus, but she did most of it by herself. She didn't need much of help from them. She is such a disaster and such an evil, nasty person. And she obviously has accepted hundreds of millions of dollars from the Saudis and the Arab oil countries over the years. So if she had gotten elected, they would be pulling her strings and she would be dancing to their tune. And that was very, very frightening. Let me get back to Twitter here. My Twitter call is at NYANDJIM1.
Say that again. NY
November Yankee ANDJIM1.
Okay.
It's almost the same as my Yahoo address.
Uh-huh. Okay. Because I know up on Facebook, I know you're up on Facebook, which is Jim Horn 3998. See, I got a good memory.
Yes.
All right. No. Go ahead.
Yeah, I also have another small Facebook page. It's called Muslim Men Hate and Fear Women.
Ah, that's the one thing I forgot to do. Yeah, you have several different books where you do speak about Islam and its effect on the society. And you go after those Muslim men pretty hard and they can get it at your website, which is jamesehorn.com. Tell us about the books.
Well, when I sat down to write my book, Muslim Men Fear Women, I thought of Saul Alinsky. And one of the lessons he says is you pick out an enemy and you go after them with the goal of humiliating them. And this book humiliates Muslim men. It talks about the awful way that Muslims treat women, about how they feel about women, about how they think about women, and that women should be eternal slaves. They should never be free. They cannot tolerate a free woman who is capable of thinking for herself, of doing things for herself, and being a wonderful, wonderful person that so many women are. That's why some Muslim women in Muslim countries have had acid thrown in their face. They've been shot. They've been killed. The Prime Minister of Pakistan was murdered because she was speaking out, and she was a strong person, and they could not tolerate the fact that she was a leader of so many people, and so many people believed in and trusted her, so they had to eliminate her. They just can't tolerate a woman who is free. And Muslim Men for Women talks about the way that Muslims treat women, have treated women since the very beginning. One of the issues in there, of course, is female genital mutilation, which was brought up to, it's an old practice. It predates Islam, of course, in the Africa and the pagan world. And this question was brought to Muhammad at one point, and he had the position he could have abolished this, he could have made it illegal. He chose not to say anything against it, so therefore he gave de facto approval of mutilating women sexually. And this is what Islam is built on, that type of treatment of people.
You know,
I have another book that's out, that's starting to catch on in some circles. It's Islam in the Workplace. The Council on American Islamic Relations has put out a guideline to employers and managers on how they should accommodate Muslim workers in the workfloor. They didn't say anything about other religions. It's only you got to do this and that, and the other thing to take care of your Muslims. One of them is to allow them to get down in the middle of the shop floor if you're in a factory or wherever else, and block traffic, slow down the work or whatever, to do your daily prayers, which is baloney. In the Quran, and quoting Muhammad, he was asked about that, and he said, "No, you have to do your prayers 5 times a day. But if you're engaged in war, if you're in a battle, if you're fighting a flood, if you're fighting a fire, or if you're running away from somebody, you don't stop in the middle of whatever you're doing and get down and pray. You're going to get your butt shot off or cut off or whatever." And that holds to the workplace. If you have work to do, you don't stop to pray in the middle of the work floor and obstruct everybody else. Muhammad said if you can't make your regular prayers, you can make up your prayers in the evening. And I took that care guideline paragraph by paragraph and dissected each paragraph, wrote the book quoting each paragraph, and then putting a disclaimer after each one of them to make it look like Claire was really, really telling a lie and passing a bunch of nonsense off on people. And this is a book that a lot of companies have used. They're putting it into their employment or their personnel hat packet. And when people come to work, they're given a copy of the handbook. They're assigned that they read it and they understand it. And then if they pull anything that's untoward, the companies can fire them, and they've got the handbook to back them up in court. Carnegie Corporation is one of the first ones who got the handbook. And they had a lot of Muslim employees in a meatpacking plant someplace, and they got a problem, and they were all fired. Of course, they went to court, and Carnegie was told that they can't fire them, that they have to hire them back. So Carnegie said, "Okay, we'll rehire you, but we're going to rehire you under our new work rules, which have encompassed what is in this handbook." And the employees have come back to work. They're surprised because now they are confronted with something that says, you do this and you do that, you're going to lose your job, and it's right here in this handbook. And if you don't comply with your work rules, you're gone. So Carnegie is going to win on that. Other companies, hundreds of companies have been adopting this, and they're really winning with it. It's a wonderful thing for them. And I urge more and more companies, every place I go, if you have a business and you're going to be employing or working with Islamists or Muslims, you need to have the handbook, Islam in the Workplace. It's not very long. It's a very easy read. You can read it in a couple of hours and get a world of information on it that will help in the workplace to keep your workplace safe for everybody, and not just to provide benefit to a privileged few. And this is a good thing. I'm working on some other stuff now, but I won't talk about it right now because I'm not ready with it. But there are things that the Islamists are finding that they don't like. They have condemned me. They have put out an edict telling Muslims that they're not allowed to read my books. They might learn something. And that my gosh, they can't let their Muslim people learn something.
Well, someone once said if someone claims to be a Muslim and actually read the Quran and were a pretty decent person thinking that Islam was a religion of peace, they would go running away from Islam when they actually learned the truth about it. I actually confronted an imam with my Quran in hand when he turned around and was saying, "Oh no, nowhere in the Quran does it say that we can't be friends with Christians and Jews." And he starts to, I think it was 958, he starts to recite, and he only gives like the first two parts of it. And I jumped up and I said, "Yeah, but you forgot the part where it says before Muhammad," meaning that anyone that was a Christian or a Jew before Muhammad came into being and created Islam, it was okay for them to be a Christian or Jew. But once Muhammad was here on earth, if you're not a Muslim, then you're a dead Christian or Jew. It didn't go over too well,
yes.
that?
Well, part of the Islamic dawah, the missionary movement, they practice a thing called kitman. Kitman is where you're expected to lie in any way possible to advance the cause of Islam. And therefore, they used parts of the Quran that were pre-Medina. Okay, when Muhammad was in Mecca, he was trying to be peaceful and Christ-like. But when he realized that business model didn't work, and he went to Mecca, and he created a new business model, which was based on pillaging and raping and murdering and attacking and being brutal. These things change, but a lot of these imams, they'll come up and they talk about paragraphs from the Quran that predate Medina, and they say, religion is actually Islam is really a religion of peace. Well, they are practicing their kitman by not telling the whole story. The story is that Islam is a religion of peace for Muslims, and the rest of the world has to submit to Islam to have peace. But if you don't submit to Islam, you don't have peace. In Islamic or Arabic language, America is called the part of the world at war. Okay, this is not a peaceful place for them. This is Dar al-Harb, a land for warfare, and that is what their practice is, that is what their belief is, and that is what their plan is to commit warfare here in the United States to force everybody to submit to Islam, because they believe that if America falls, the world will fall. And they're probably right in that sense. I have some writings about Russia and China in my book, Experiencing Islam, that discuss that issue. And when people read it, they kind of put down the book and they grab their head and they say, "Holy stuff."
Well, Jim, we've run out of time, and we got Vito says that you've been on the front line for years on this issue, and he says thank you. And we also have a gentleman in the chat room who happens to be fighting a court battle. He won his previous one when he called a certain individual a mendacious Muslim taqiyya artist. Tim, I'm sorry if I don't have it correctly, but he was talking because he called a guy a taqiyya artist, was taken to court, but Tim won. But Jim, I'm going to have you back on. It is a pleasure having you with us on the show, and there's so much more to talk about. I only went through about 3 questions I had written down for you, but I let you run with it. So I'll give you a call and get you back on the show soon.
Okay, yes, we'll do that.
All right, and thank you, and say hello to your lovely bride.
I will. She's been listening in here, and she's been enjoying it, so that's very good. Yes, and I'd love if you can come back on your show as soon as you're ready.
Okay, great. I'll take a look at my calendar and give you a shout later on. You have a great afternoon and a good weekend. Thank you. All right, check out his
yes,
website.
and thank you so very much. God bless you and everybody that's listening.
All right.
Take care.
Good owners of America. This is Eleanor. How can I help you?
Yes, hi. This is Ann with Southern Sense. Is Larry Pratt available?
I can check and see. Who is it again, ma'am?
This is Ann. I'm the host of Southern Sense Talk Radio. He's scheduled to be on the show now.
Oh, okay. Hold on just a moment. Hold on.
This is Larry Pratt.
Hi, Larry. It's Ann Ubelis with Southern Sense. How are you doing?
I am well, and thank you for giving us another chance. We messed up the last time you called in. We're still getting used to our phone system, and I had another call, and you just got lost in voicemail, I'm afraid. So.
Oh, that's all right. Things happen.
Terrible.
Things happen. Right now I've got a song playing, so as soon as the song's over, it'll be a couple of minutes, about 3 minutes, and then I'll bring you on live. Okay?
Okay.
All right, fantastic.
Thanks. That's great.
All right.
I got American heart. I got American faith in America's heart. Go on, raise the flag. I got stars in my eyes. I'm in love with her, and I won't apologize. They say that we need changes, as if all the founding fathers seem to get it wrong. Oh, but I say that I still believe in the greatest innovator, liberator, cultivator, freedom knows. So I suggest
that was John Kahn, American Heart. And we're back. You're here listening to Southern Sense here on Blog Talk Radio, American Patriot Radio, SHR Media, High Plains Media, Daily News, Kinetic Hi-Fi, the Fix FM out of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm your hostess with the mostest, the radio chick, Annie, along with my co-host, Curtis C.S. Bennett. And we got our guest, the teeth in straight. I was able to do that whole patter without messing up, Curtis. The last thing I try to do is just talk. We got our next guest back on the line. That previous Jim Horn was excellent, but we love having this gentleman on the show, no matter how much he makes me cry. So we'll welcome from Gun Owners of America. Welcome back, Larry Pratt. Good afternoon, Larry.
I'm sorry I make you cry. What in the world?
Well, we have to explain to the audience, the last time you were supposed to be with us, you have a new phone system over there, and it just kind of like put me up into cyberspace somewhere, just threw me out, said, we're not going to send this
I'm
message
afraid
through.
you're still out there. I'm glad you came back in. It's terrible.
Man, we've got a president in there that finally things can get undone and done correctly. Holy moly, for 8 years, I can't believe we managed to survive it, but we got a long way to dig ourselves back to help preserve our Second Amendment. What's your take on this?
I would tend to second what you just said, and I think the fact that the country seems to still have a pulse is a testimony to the resilience of the American people and our country, and I'm glad that now we've got somebody that, instead of hating America and trying to destroy it, because that's what Obama was up to, and he was pretty clear about it. I'm not really making anything up at all. He did his level best to destroy everything in sight. Now we've got a guy who, even though he wasn't my first choice for president, we were supporting Ted Cruz over here. This guy clearly not only does not hate America, but he wants to see America defended and protected and advanced, and he's doing some pretty good things. And what a difference from what we just had, or what we could have had the distaff candidate been elected. Oh, my.
And everyone knows how much she hates us and our God and guns. Man, she's still
we're deplorable.
Yes, but we're adorable deplorables. You got to get that right. We're adorable and being deplorable. You know, it's.
I'll go comb my hair.
I think it was about a year or two ago. One of the last times we had you on the show, we were talking about this executive order and rule that was put into place with veterans, where I think it's something like over 100,000 veterans have lost their Second Amendment rights because of a clerical.
Yep. So far, it's last count is 157,000.
Whoa. And I said to you, and it says, all right, they're going after the veterans, but watch out, they're going to go after those that are on Social Security, disability, and Medicare. And sure enough, the very last thing he did as he walked out the door is put another rule in place that if you are on Social Security or Medicare and you have a guardian taking care of your checks, that, oops, you're not going to be... you can't handle a gun. If you can't handle your own checks...
You know, one thing I believe that might help put that rule in perspective. Okay, so somebody, say he's 75 years old, and he's got somebody now writing his checks for him. Does anybody think that Donald Trump has written his own checks in the last 20 years?
Well, actually,
Please.
I was listening to someone that was filling in for, was it Sean Hannity or Andrew Wilkow? And he happened to have been someone who worked on one of Donald Trump's projects. And it was something to upstate New York, and they had to get this masonry wall built. And it looks like everything was going to be 2 weeks behind schedule because of certain things. Well, the crew was able to get these things done as a gift to him. And he shows up on the site and found that everything's done 2 weeks early. Whatever he had planned, whatever event he had planned can go forward on schedule. Do you know what he said, what Trump did? He said the vast majority of the Masons that worked on there, none of them were white. He went to the bank, took out a boatload of cash and went to each and every one of those crew members that worked on that Mason job and gave them a $500 bonus cash. So I think maybe Trump...
it's kind of typical of the guy. He's personally a very generous and affable guy from all accounts. That's not atypical what you're reporting.
You know, I had the pleasure of seeing him at the South Carolina Tea Party Coalition conventions the last couple of years that he was up there with us. And he was willing to stop and talk to anyone. You know, again, he was not my first choice, you know, being a native New Yorker, living in the South now, but native New Yorker, you know, you read the headlines and he's a rich guy, rich snob, blah, 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 blah. And I was, like you, a Ted Cruz person. But once he got the nomination, I was 100% behind him. And I said, a pet rock could do a better job than Hillary Clinton. So think of Donald Trump as a pet rock. But, oh, man, he's not a pet rock. He is that boulder coming down that hill, coming straight for you.
He has turned out to be rather different from what I had assumed, that here's a guy that had given money to Hillary Clinton, and I just assumed, okay, you know, he's involved in New York City politics. He's a liberal Democrat. I did vote for him thinking he was a liberal Democrat, because at least I'm voting for Franklin Roosevelt as opposed to Joseph Stalin, which was the Joseph Stalin in a skirt alternative. And so, you know,
I'll be a little honest here.
And then I find out that, no, the guy actually seems to have some pretty good instincts. And what I'm seeing is, from the very get-go, his choice of vice president, his choice of attorney general, and so on, and has gone. He's a very serious right-of-center candidate, president now, and I think he is, so far, he's doing a very good job.
Yeah, it's funny. We've got someone in the chat room moving forward. He's saying, from listening to the show, I better collect my own checks. But, you know, this is something that they've tried several times. I know you and I discussed, I believe you and I had discussed at one point, it was about 3 years ago, a woman in California was put on Paxil. She wasn't violent. She wasn't threatening. She just had a couple of emotional problems, and the Paxil just kept her on an even keel. Her husband happened to be a gun owner, but because she was on Paxil, a psychotropic, they decided to go to the home and take his guns away because she was on this medication.
Any excuse is a good excuse to grab somebody's guns as far as too many of these types in the federal government are concerned. And when there are fewer of them in the federal government, we won't have as many of these problems. And so I really hope that the time comes when Mr. Trump decides to govern through the power of zero, just getting the Congress to defund some of these agencies. And, you know, if they got rid of the Veterans Administration, kaput, gone the next day, then they could give these guys vouchers and let them go to the hospital and the doctor of their choice. Then we wouldn't have all this bureaucracy setting up these stupid criteria and the delays, people dying waiting to see a doctor. Good. There won't be any VA doctor to see at all. You'll have a voucher and you can go on your way.
You know, we've talked about this, using something like, looks like a Visa card or an EBT card. And, you know, all right, you got so much allotment. You're a veteran, you serve 10 years, you get X amount per month. And let them use it as they see fit to get the care and stuff that they need. But the worst part is that a lot of these guys are afraid to seek psychiatric help, whether or not they've got traumatic brain injury or PTSD, because they know once that goes on their record...
They understand how the game is played. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a real pity. But that's the reality right now. And I just hope that they figure out, maybe they'll get about as good a result if they go see a clergyman and get their counseling there, because it's dangerous for their gun rights to go see a shrink. And he's, in many cases, increasingly, he's got to report it. Violates all the medical canons but that doesn't seem to matter to our friends, the bureaucrats. And that's just one of the problems of having the government stick its nose in the medical system, and why I think a voucher-type system or a credit or whatever, but something that just breaks free from the bureaucracy. And the bureaucracy is told, tomorrow you can go and get another job. We're going to give you 3 months' pay. Have a nice day.
Exactly. Now, you served, didn't you, Larry?
No. No, I never did. Closest I got to the military was the Naval ROTC.
Oh, go ahead, Curtis. Curtis happens to be a veteran of the Gulf War.
Yeah, I was just thinking of all the detective shows I watch. I mean, they got channels now where you can just watch that 24/7. I wish there was a channel that showed nothing but citizens who save a lot, somebody's life or their own using a gun. That would be great.
There are a lot of those examples. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be good at countering everything else we hear about guns being bad,
Yeah, and we continue to hear people say, well, guns are not used in self-defense, or guns are not used to stop mass murders, guns in the hands of private citizens. And, of course, we've responded to that, and you can find on gunowners.org a list of mass murders that would have been mass murders that weren't, because a good guy with a gun was available to stop the bad guy with a gun.
There's such a misnomer about guns and legal gun owners. People will quote the statistics that they find up on the federal government websites, and like X amount of people were killed with guns, but it doesn't break it down. How many of them were illegally possessed at the time of the crime compared to someone that has a legal gun? Why doesn't our government?
And now they're beginning
that?
to that, and then they're starting to try another tact by saying, well, there have been so many mass shootings, and they don't tell you whether or not the mass shooting involved more than one person, and whether it was a wounding or even hit somebody or was a murder. So they're using, anytime a gun goes bang, oh, that's a mass shooting. and for all I know, they might have accidental discharge there as part of the mass murder statistic, but they're extremely dishonest, and it's gotten to the point where if you see it in the news, don't believe it.
I think this last election just proved it. If you see it in the news, don't believe it, because Trump was down in the polls. Trump was losing. Hillary was going to be the next president of the United States. And lo and behold, the next morning, on November 9th, a lot of people were shocked.
And they believe that themselves, and the Hillary Clinton campaign headquarters was enjoying a celebratory evening until about, I think it was around 9:30 or 10, and reality began to set in, and then they got kind of calm before they went into a catatonic state. But yeah, they really believe their own lying data, their own lying polls. And I'm so happy that Trump is at war with the media. That's something that Republicans have been warned forever not to do, and he doubles down. And I think it's to the point where he's going to win. They've probably already lost. And what we're doing right now is the way people get information. We don't need... I can't tell you how many... It's probably been 2 decades since I had a subscription to the local paper, the Washington Post. Why bother?
Did you go to the...
I don't have a dog, so I don't have a bird, so I don't need the liners. So, I just stopped the subscription.
Did you go to the inauguration?
Oh no, that was too many people. I've been here a long time, and I know what the traffic was going to be like. So I stayed in my nice warm home, and I watched and listened and got my work done. And I kept from making the traffic worse for those nice people visiting the city.
Well, I was one of them. Actually, we were staying in a private apartment just 2 blocks behind the Capitol. And we had a blast. We had a lot of fun, at the inauguration. And again, the media said, there's a small crowd. And I'm looking around and I said, what do you mean small crowd?
If this is a small crowd, I'm glad it's no bigger because I'll never get home tonight.
Well, you know what? The first thing is that we did on the drive back down here to South Carolina, through North Carolina off of I-95, there's this one hunting store. It sells firearms and stuff. And what we all 3 of us did, we jumped out, 3 gals. I'm dressed like a yuppie or something. Jump out, going into the sporting goods store, and we're buying ammo. The guys behind the counter look all like these mountain men, looking at these 3 little petite women, going, it said, we just came back from the inauguration. We know now we can buy this and not have to worry. But that was the general collective feel of those of us on the right. Once he took office, everyone was going, all right, now we can go out, we can buy the firearms we want, we can get the ammo we need. And one of the things that you guys have been fighting with is, if I can get this correctly, the Hearing Protection Act, which deals with a suppressor. Right. And how they were trying to make, through this act, certain types of ammo, certain types of attachments to your firearm. If they can ban them, then basically they're going to try to make it where you can't use your firearm.
They look for any which way they can come at us to restrict it, to make it more of a hassle. And the beauty is that there are, at the moment, actually, I was going to say 12 states with constitutional carry, meaning no permit required to carry a concealed firearm. But the governor of New Hampshire may have already, as we've been speaking, almost literally, signed a measure the legislature passed yesterday. And so New Hampshire is or will be almost immediately the 13th concealed carry state with no permit required, constitutional carry. We could go to as many as 20 states on the outside by the end of the legislative year. This is a movement that is on the march. And imagine people just putting a gun in their purse or their pocket and going outside and going to the store and going to school and whatever. And, well, of course, they might have trouble with these stupid no gun zones at schools. But nevertheless, go most places with their concealed firearm, no permission from any bureaucrat required. And I think we're going to see probably all but a handful of the really Looney Tunes states, maybe 6 to 8 or 9 of them, end up in a very short period of time saying, yeah, constitutional carry is the way to go. And a lot of bureaucrats will be assigned to doing other things, maybe digging ditches or something like that. And this whole notion that the state needs to have a record of who has a gun and who can carry it, and we'll approve it, and gee, we want to make sure you won't shoot your eye out. Yeah, that's a real problem.
Yeah, because I was living in New York State, and only because I was a retired police officer was I able to have my concealed carry permit. But once I came down here to South Carolina back in 2001, at that point in time, you had to be a resident here for 1 year and then take an 8-hour class. Now you can be a resident here for less than 24 hours. As long as you take the 8-hour class, you can get yourself a concealed carry permit. But
that's getting progress.
That is progress, but I will tell you that concealed weapons class that was taught by the SLED, the State Law Enforcement Division, I sat with my back to the wall because I was looking at some of these people with passing guns around. I'm going, wait a minute, no one touches my firearm, number one. Rule number one, it's mine, you don't touch it. So I was just in the back, and of course the instructor came over to me afterwards, seeing that I was NYPD, and he goes, what'd you think of the class? And I said, you noticed my back was against the wall. He just smiled and walked away. But what we were trying to do here last year was to have an open carry, because my state senator came down to my Tea Party meeting, and he's looking at me, and he goes, Ann, where do you carry when you conceal? And I says, a lady don't tell. because he's looking at the attire, and I says, yes, we would love to have an open carry here, because if you are a female, they don't make clothing that a lady like me could walk into, a dinner party or something and still have a weapon concealed on me. You end up having to wear this bulky, ugly clothing, and you don't feel attractive. So this is what we're trying to do here. But I'd also love to see where we would not need to have that permit for a concealed carry, too, here in South Carolina.
It has obviously not been a problem in Vermont, which has had it, as you know, forever, perhaps 80 years now, I think. And a lot of other states now have had it for quite some time. Alaska has had it for well over a decade. And in that first decade they had it, their violent crime rate, went down. It's clearly not a threat to the public order. We don't need bureaucrats who generally mess up everything anyway in charge of how we're going to protect ourselves. And it works very nicely without the bureaucrats being involved.
Exactly. These are things that you guys are working on, and I'd love to see, and I'll see if I can get my state senator to contact you, because he was the one that was trying to push for the the open carry, and maybe he can also work on getting the no permit too. So if you get a call from a state senator by the name of Tom Davis, I'm the one that's going to send him your way. See if we can get that moving here. Now
excellent.
Oh, no problem. I was on a panel that's going to air tomorrow on a radio, J.J. McCarthy's show, and we were talking about a lot of these issues, and up came the conversation with Jeff Sessions, and he is now our DOJ, he's now our Attorney General, and they asked me, what is your opinion with Sessions? And I said, law enforcement, of course, the nation had a collective sigh of relief. What's your opinion now
Amen.
With Jeff Sessions in office?
Yeah. Ditto. He is such a breath of fresh air. First of all, he's a decent guy. He's a real gentleman, and that was what a difference between him and Eric Holder or his successor, two of the most ideological enemies of the Constitution that you can imagine. And now we've got a guy who loves the country, loves the Constitution, and wants to carry out his office duties of office in that with that as his frame of thinking. What a difference! It's just a new day here, and a guy like Sessions was. That was after Mike Pence, which was the first signal that Donald Trump was maybe not going to be the New York Democrat that I thought he might be. He had given money to Hillary Clinton. You can excuse me for having had that perception. And then he chooses Sessions as his Attorney General. That was 2 out of 2 home runs. Every time the guy went to bat, he's knocking it out of the park, and he's continued to do that. We're just very pleased to have somebody like this that we're going to be able to work with and see a lot of progress here in Washington. I think the legislation that we might be able to get through will be enhanced because we'll have somebody like Sessions.
Yeah, some of that legislation that you...
Larry.
Oh, go ahead, Chris, and then I'm going to go on with another question here. Curtis?
Yeah, I got a question. It's going to take it in another direction. That is, what do you think of the stand your ground law? And do you think it's catching on to other states? I live in Florida. What do you think is convicted by the Zimmerman Trayvon Martin case?
No, I don't think the Zimmerman case set it back. In fact, it turned out that at the end of the day, although the news didn't cover it nearly as much, Zimmerman had acted in self-defense. And he didn't even need a stand-your-ground law, as it turns out. When your back is on the ground and you're having your brains knocked out, there's no ground to stand. You're on the ground. But the idea still got out that there wasn't anything wrong with the law. And it looks as if these laws are going to be this law will be on the books of more and more states, and I think that's just terrific that finally self-defense is not something that's viewed as a threat to the state or something like that. Which there's been a hostility in the past, and I think we're seeing that pass away fairly quickly now.
No, it's true, because here in South Carolina, we had been new here, and we had gotten word that there was a bunch of burglaries going on in our neighborhood. And this one guy kept knocking on my front door. And the third day he did it, I go up to the front door. I had my little revolver tucked in my waistband. And I just said to him, "You've got to the count of 10 to get off my front steps. And I've got a long driveway. You can probably park about 6 cars nose to tail and then reach the street." That guy was down that driveway before I got to 3. Stand your ground. There's a purpose to it. We call it the castle doctrine here. But whether it's in your vehicle or in your home, if you're being intimidated...
Or out on the street.
Yes, exactly.
Your castle's wherever you are. Yeah.
Well, there is a question here, because I don't know where he's getting the stacks, but Moving makes a comment that home invasions rise in states with stringent gun laws. We had the case with New York State, where it was Judge Janine had her address posted because she's a gun owner. They wanted to print the list of those that own guns. These
That's
gun
vicious.
laws, that has to be overturned. Those are the laws that should not go. That's an invasion of privacy.
Any state that requires a permit to carry concealed, or for that matter, to even own a gun, as I think New York does, then those kinds of privacy protections are essential. And of course, once we get rid of state involvement in ownership and carry, then that's not going to be as big a threat. But I just can't imagine anything more viciously intended to bring harm, at a minimum to set somebody up as a target for a home invasion. But I think there's more to it than that. I think they want to teach us gun owners a lesson.
Well, if you want to try to invade my home and take my guns, fine. Just be aware I'm going to be locked and loaded and ready for you to walk through that front door.
Yes, would you, if it's not too much trouble, please bring your own body bag.
But another reason why they want us to register our guns is because this UN Small Arms Treaty, which is another natural disaster, letting our enemies know who owns what where. The easiest way to cause a gun collection, an easy way for an Islamic to come into my neighborhood and say, whoa, that has to be a Christian conservative, so let's attack that one individual, that house.
And what a notion that a foreign entity, in this case the UN, can require the U.S. to have any kind of law. That's obnoxious. The UN is one of the most despicable entities in the world, has presided over more genocide than perhaps only exceeded by Hitler and Stalin. And then to say that they are going to be in charge of whether I can defend myself, I don't think so. We need to be out of the UN. That is just such a dangerous place to be. And we spend a lot of money there so that we can pay people to insult the Constitution and America's exceptionalism. And frankly, I think we should let them have the UN. They can find another building, perhaps Geneva. That seems to be the international city, fine. Because we ought to just take back the UN and have the Marriott Company or Hyatt or somebody use it for a hotel.
Now, the Sasquatch in the chat room makes a note that under Sharia law, non-Muslims cannot own weapons. And that comes into this refugee resettlement program and the immigration moratorium that Trump has attempted to put on. We're being inundated with Muslims, and they are looking to put Sharia law in. They're starting off in small communities and now trying in large states like Minnesota. What's your take on this?
Lots of luck. I don't think Sharia law is going to go down very well. I'll tell you, well, I don't even want to tell you what I would like to do, but I'm just not going to go with that program. Muslims need to hear the gospel of Jesus Christ, but they don't need to be telling us what to do. And if they want to try that, I'm going to tell them to shut up and listen.
Oh, man. I think I told you about the seminar I went to, Love Thy Muslim Neighbor, at a local Unitarian church, where I did confront the imams concerning Sharia law and various verses of the Quran that they're trying to tell us over. But
he probably lied through his teeth.
Oh, yes. And I called him out on it. And, of course, I was the one that was being told to sit the blank down and shut the blank up. They didn't quite enjoy it.
Yeah, because you're just a woman, so who are you? Yeah.
But you had these progressives that were eating up the garbage that they were telling us. You know, the American public is not really that stupid, but you have a section of it that we're seeing now on TV in these violent protests that will just buy whatever the message that the left hands out. You know, do you see a growing conservative movement being able to quell these protests, being able to counter them with the truth?
I think so. I think that's one way to explain how Donald Trump got elected. People have been so fed up with being told to accept this kind of un-American, dangerous nonsense that finally enough of us came together on November 8th and we said, Mrs. Clinton, your time has gone. Goodbye. And Donald Trump was given the keys to the White House because he was the guy talking about putting an end to this kind of nonsense. And the one thing that I particularly liked about Trump's message was both parties are the problem. Both parties.
Yeah, well, look at the Lindsey Grahams and the John McCains and what it's gotten us. You know, Lisa Murkowski,
and Paul Ryan, and Mitch
Susan
McConnell.
Yep.
The whole leadership of the Republican Party was just, let's be polite, goofy.
And now they're finding that the countering is not what they expected. Because even in my local county GOP, when I joined it and I became my precinct executive committee woman, one of the members that was signing me up says, "Why do you want to join the county GOP?" And he says, "I want to take back the Republican Party." That didn't go over too well, because if you actually read what the doctrine of the Republican Party as written in the convention at that time, it was a highly conservative message, and yet the party fails to follow that message.
It's an embarrassment that they tolerate, but they're certainly not going to be caught following the party platform.
Well, unfortunately, we are now holding the feet to the fire, and the party platform is starting to be enforced via Donald Trump. You know, on your GAO website, which is gunowners.org website, great one with great news articles. You know, you talk about a lot of stuff that Trump can do with his pen and the executive orders, and one of them was one thing I was not aware of about this gun collecting order that went out that can imprison hobbyists for simply buying a gun one day and then selling it for a profit on the very next day, that they can face prison for doing that.
Yes, under our recently departed dear leader, one of his many executive orders would have made them a dealer. They would have been dealing without a license, therefore they are subject to imprisonment and or big fines. There was an animus that Obama had, I'm sure he's not lost it, for private gun ownership. And when he was leaving office, he confessed to his buds in the media, I was almost ready to say left-wing media, but that's a redundancy, that his biggest disappointment was his inability to advance his agenda in the area of guns. Yes!
Well, he tried a lot of different things, and one of them is if you were an online dealer and you did not have a brick-and-mortar location, you can't sell firearms. Do we see that coming off now?
Oh, I think all of those things are on the chopping block. I think Trump is... I'm willing to give him a little bit of time just because I don't want to see him get writer's cramp, because he's going to have to sign a lot of executive orders to get rid of all this junk. And the beauty of it is that Obama never had a Congress that would go along with most of his nonsense. So he was ruling like a despot by fiat, which means in our context an executive order. Well, you live by the executive order, you can die by the executive order, and hopefully before too much time goes by, all those executive orders are going to be right where they belong, in the trash can.
Well, let's hope that's going to happen, because when you look at some of the stuff that's going through, you have someone like the Minority Leader Chuck Schumer that wants to filibuster. Now, that filibuster has to go back to pre-1973 rules to allow the Senate to move. As it stands now, if he comes up with a filibuster, everything stops dead once again.
There's a way around the filibuster without even blowing it up and using the so-called nuclear option, which would basically destroy the filibuster. There are rules in the Senate that would let something like this happen. McConnell would say, okay, right now is the beginning of a legislative day, and I'll tell you when the day is over. Now, in the past, one legislative day lasted for about 180 calendar days. During that legislative day, whether it be one calendar day or the 180 days, a member of the Senate is only allowed to address an issue twice. So Senator Hiawatha would quickly burn up her two, sorry, I got the name wrong. She would only have those two cracks at it, and then she has to shut up. And they found another rule to shut her up recently. So there are ways to get this done and to put her on the bench so that she doesn't dominate. I mean, imagine somebody from New York City telling the United States Senate, which supposedly represents the whole country, this is going to be your agenda. No, ma'am, it's not going to be our agenda. And you can go back to your little bonfire and hoop around you want, and we'll even give you a tomahawk. But you are not going to dominate the agenda here. And so I think she can be handled without destroying the rules of the Senate.
Well, there is also a special procedure that's being put in place specifically for the veterans in order for them to get back their Second Amendment rights. And I want to make sure I got this right because I wrote this down. It's House Resolution 40 and the Senate has Resolution 14 under a special procedure where they may be able to restore these rights to the veterans. How does this special procedure work, and how does it avoid the filibuster?
Well, it would be a declaration that the use of a simple psychiatric diagnosis that has nothing to do with violent behavior is no longer to be used to prohibit somebody from being able to buy or own a firearm. And that just basically blows out most of what Obama was up to. And so these folks would once again be free because that data has to come back out of the NICS computer if it had been put in to begin with. So you're disqualified this week because of Obama, but next week because of Trump, you'll be qualified again.
Wow, I bet there's 157,000 veterans right now applauding you right now, Larry, for what you and gun owners of America
live by the executive order, die by the executive order. So the fundamental transformation of America didn't involve a transformation of our hearts, Mr. Obama. We still hate your socialism, and we're going to get rid of it.
Now, a number of years ago, they passed legislation where if you're a law enforcement officer or you're a retired law enforcement officer, you basically had reciprocity across the United States. But they threw a caveat in there so that if you wanted to carry, say, I'm in New York and I want to go to New Jersey, I've got to take and qualify with that police department's, whatever course they teach, and I've got to qualify as if I'm one of their officers. That's how they ended up, hamstringing us. But now there's a national reciprocity bill out there, H.R. 38. How does that work, and why is it something that's good for everyone?
Well, it says that if I have a concealed carry permit in Virginia, I can fly to Chicago with my gun in the hold of the plane, declared, get it out when I get to some place where I don't cause a panic, and put that baby wherever I carry my concealed firearm, and I'll be good to go and legal and all of that in Chicago. And Chicago doesn't have to know about it, doesn't have to like it. And if they were to find out about it, there's nothing they can do unless I'm trying to rob a bank or some other uncivil behavior. So that is the real heart of the thing, that they will have to recognize a concealed carry permit the same as they have to recognize driver's permits.
Now, what happens is a lot of times people cross over a state line without even realizing it. And just that simple little oops, because not all the roads to your bordering state are marked. You have entered Virginia or you have entered Georgia. They're not all marked. And someone can very accidentally cross the street and find themselves, oh, wow, guess what? I'm in Pennsylvania.
I know there's a road along the southern border of Oregon that goes in and out of California. So it's exactly what you're talking about. And Oregon's a fairly gun-friendly state. California is quite the opposite. And so right there is a place where lots of people could run into trouble, and this measure is going to help them enormously.
Well, how does it look for passing? Do you think we'll get it through?
The House has the votes without very much question. The only conceivable problem is any lack of enthusiasm on Speaker Ryan's part in bringing it up for a vote. But once it does come up for a vote, it's almost certain to pass. The Senate is more problematic because you may end up needing 60 votes unless we decide to find a way around that 60. And that, even there, I think we are maybe at 59 votes, and so the play will be for that last Democrat to finally come into play. And there's a bunch of Democrat senators that are up in 18 that have to run in states that Trump won. And so the question to these senators is, on this coming vote, are you feeling lucky?
There's actually 10 of them that are up for re-election in 2018, and right now we're holding the Senate by a 52-48 majority. So there is a possibility, if they want to get themselves reelected, that they would have to switch sides, which would probably make Chuck Schumer, or I have another name for his first part of the name. It happens to be a Yiddish term.
Yeah. Well, I've actually heard Mark Levin use it on the air. So anyway.
Well, considering I had a lot of interactions with the Hasidic Jews in Brooklyn when I was a cop, you learned a lot of words like that.
Yeah, you become bilingual right there on the job.
Oh, man. Now, we also have Neil Gorsuch, which is up for SCOTUS here. And there has been reports in various different news outlets that the anti-gun section is trying to do their own form of the jihad to try to torpedo, his ascension to the Supreme Court. Do you think they have a chance, or do we see Neil Gorsuch soon as a Supreme Court?
My betting would be that he's going to be on that court fairly soon. Again, there are ways to do that, to make that happen, and McConnell has shown himself to be going along with the program. In the past, you never knew where he was going to be, but so far it looks like he's lined up with the way the voters called it last November. And Trump, of course, is a very firm leader, and so nobody has any doubt about what Trump wants and what he might do if you want to buck him. This is one of Trump's virtues, I think, and one of the things that has been winning me over to him is that he fights. And so McConnell is not used to fighting anybody for anything except other Republicans. And then he would go to war. Well, he's now met a Republican who's willing to go to war with anybody. So if you're feeling lucky, Mitch, come on, bring it on. And I think there's going to be peace in the Senate because of that. We have a mutually assured destruction, as we used to call it when we were house training Gorbachev. And I think it's going to be fairly amicable in the Senate. They may not love Trump, but they know they're going to have to live with him. And he is not going to be somebody they can push around.
You know, Gun Owners of America does so much good work, and not a lot of people know about them. You know, tell our listeners about Gun Owners of America and why, for the measly $20, it's worth joining your organization.
Well, our main way of getting things done is through our email alerts. People can get on that list for free. Just go to gunowners.org. And when you get one of those alerts, it tells you in usually probably less than a minute how you can accomplish the stated objective of the alert. A little, click here, here, and there, and boom, off goes an email to your member of Congress. I'll give you an example of how that has worked. When we came off the Newtown or the Sandy Hook tragedy, there was a kind of predictable movement for more gun control. They were trying to get an expansion of the instant background check, which is actually the instant gun owner registration system. The background check doesn't stop crime. I think out of some 20 million transactions, maybe 40 arrests were made and many fewer than that convictions. So the idea of spending all that money for that kind of result it's an insult to the name of law enforcement, frankly. So anyway, this has been the fight, I guess, of our time. And coming off that tragedy, the NRA wanted an extension of the existing background check that they had supported and that we had opposed, by the way. And finally, I think people have realized, after mass murders that were not prevented by a background check, these dirtbags are able to buy guns in spite of the background check, because it turns out most of the mass murderers, this is their first venture into violent crime, certainly that we know about. And so they were not uppable by the background check. So false security, why not focus on getting more potential victims armed? Why not cut off their ability to shoot up a gun-free zone like a school by getting rid of gun-free zones and encouraging teachers and principals and whatnot to have guns, so the next time some dirtbag comes into what used to be a gun-free zone, he gets wheeled out without hardly any victims at all. Very discouraging for other wannabe dirtbags. Who wants to copy something like that? So the copycat the criminal activity, I think, would be greatly reduced. And that's the thing that we've been seeking. That we were able to overcome the NRA because the NRA was into the background check. They thought this was a way of diverting other more serious gun control. We thought it was pretty serious gun control, and we were just delighted that finally, with so many people on the email list that we have communicating with members of the Senate, the thing collapsed, and it never succeeded, even after the horrible shooting at the Sandy Hook school. So if people go to gunowners.org, it's a free service, get on that email list, and we'll keep whacking away at gun control. And it's only one email that you send, but along with a few thousand of your closest personal friends, it makes a difference.
Yeah, at least now you're not doing whack-a-mole, so you are hitting the target.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh,
yes, ma'am.
It has been such a pleasure to have you on the show, despite all the little glitches that came along. And you're always welcome. It is such a pleasure always to talk with you. And I feel a little
same
safer.
here. Thank you.
Oh, I feel a little safer to know that now that you can team up with the Trumpster and get that Trump train rolling, and it's going to go down the tracks.
It looks like it, so just hang on, folks. I think it's going to be quite a ride.
It's going to be a fun ride. Larry, you have a great weekend, and I'll be talking with you and get you back on soon again.
I look forward to it. Thank you so much.
All right, you have a great day. All right, Curtis, we're going to be back here on Tuesday. We got two great guests coming in. We've got author Jack Engelhard. He's got a new book out, America's Sweetheart, which is kind of like a little take. It's not exactly about a certain former Fox News anchor woman, but it kind of like takes off on her personality, and it's a fun read. We also have comedian Rodney Lee Conover will be joining us. And we got also coming up, Ryan Rhino DeCiccio is going to be joining us. You got your buddy Mike Hill coming up. We got Bill Pickle from the Pickle Barrel will be joining us. And I have it confirmed, but we got a very special guest coming up on the 28th. Someone that we should have seen run for the office of the president, but he chose not to. He may be running for another elected office. Let me give it a little hint. He was in the Army. He served as a colonel. He served in Congress, and he will be serving here on Southern Sense at the end of the month. That's as much of a tease I'm going to give for now. So, Curtis, that's all for today. That's our show. So I want to thank everyone that joined us.
Everybody have a good weekend.
Yeah, everyone that joined us in the studio listening in, and everyone that was in the chat room, I want to thank you all for joining us. And I will be leaving us with My Name is America by Todd Allen Herndon, and we will be back here Tuesday. Same bat time, same bat station. So be out there safe this weekend. I say good night, and God bless.
In the grip of oppression, I fought for my liberty. I paid with the blood of my people. Freedom has never been free. Now my door's always open to dreamers and friends. But when I'm attacked, I protect and defend, because my name is America. I stand proud and free. My name is America. Don't tread on me. I cannot be broken. I cannot be shamed. If you hurt me, I'll get stronger, and I'll rise
90 seconds.
from the flames, and I'll always stand proud and free. I'm America, don't tread on me. America is my name. My strength was not taken from others. Others gave it to me. They believe in the
60
virtues
seconds.
I stand for. My respect for humanity. Now I'm challenged by tyrants who envy my power, but their vicious deeds become my finest hour, because my name is America. I stand proud and free. My name is America. Don't tread on me. I cannot be broken. I cannot be shamed.
10 seconds.